You can start.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So we are now heading toward the interview session with Mr. Taha Ababou, which is our first speaker to our session. So myself, I am Dr. Elima Hussain. I am a postdoc at Stanford. So it's just been 4 months of till now here in Stanford. I have started my journey. So my previous work was using the imaging. So now Stanford, I am into MRI research where I'm working with the not only with the imaging staff, but I'm also into some of the more technical part of what is about the MRI scanner. So we are collaborating with GE Healthcare and working on their project and recruiting the patients and then making the MRI more robust, accessible to everyone. So I am now looking forward to hear from both of you. Yeah, here you
Yeah.
go.
So my name is Vajinder, and I'm a statistical practice student at Boston University. Currently, as Elima gave you a lot of introduction about her work, so I will continue toward that as well. So in our program, we are working with Fidelity Investments on the project related to LLMs and RAG AI. And continuing further, we are also having some consulting projects. We are working as a statistical consultant with research groups from BU itself. And right now, we are having my friend Taha over here, who's also my classmate in the same program. So I'll let him into the talk now, let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Vijender. So my name is Taha. As Vijender mentioned, we're both classmates in the Masters of Statistical Practice at Boston University. And we are working towards many different types of work projects, and among them are AI applications such as chatbot development, LLM development. And that is kind of like, I would say, my forte in the sense that this is really my passion when it comes to like technology, coding, and all that related work. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So it's been like a very long time since I hosted Elima over. Like on my LinkedIn, I still have like interview session which I hosted with her. Usually I connect with people and have their interviews over. So Elima had a first-hand experience with it, right, Elima?
Yeah, it was. I think it was also very nice as we shared our journey when we decided like we should start something like this through this platform where we can introduce some of the exciting people we meet and some of we feel like we should pass on to the next generation or into our generation to get some insight. Is it like, and I think Vajinder, you also posted something like insights of what we
Yeah.
had in LinkedIn, and I think
Yeah,
you got
exactly. I posted our
yes,
like the interview that I had with you, and I
yeah,
posted what you answered to my questions. And many students surprisingly reached out to me asking questions
oh,
about how would they get to where we are currently and how would they join the university or program. So then when I shared with you and you were like, maybe we should make it something official organization. So here we are with Taha as our first speaker, sharing
yeah,
his story with the viewers, whoever so will be viewing this video.
yeah.
So I think we shall continue with the questions. Then we shall continue to ask Taha about his story, shall we, Alima?
Yeah, yeah. So let me tell the viewers about like the insights we are talking about, like how is it to balance like from the journey as you are also a student, you are also working into a field and you are just all you juggle upon your lifestyle and just and you have your dream to take out this venture. So the first question I would like to have is about Taha, what's your journey into the tech field and how further you just want to start with the AI and the chatbot development?
Mhm. So my journey really started back in high school, and it was really driven by a love for solving problems, by curiosity, and I was fascinated by how apps, websites, and games work. So I began experimenting with coding. And at the time, I wasn't really professional in coding. It was more about just experimentation, see what I can do, what I cannot do. And one of my earliest projects was a platform designed to help French speakers learn English through some sort of interactive mini games, right? Now, it wasn't like some sort of groundbreaking product, but it gave me a first glimpse into the power of technology and how I can achieve things by actually building it from scratch and seeing the impact it has on a certain community. And then in college, I decided to pursue a bachelor's in computer engineering. And this is where I really deepened my whole technical foundation. So at the same time, while pursuing my academics, all the work-related courses that we had, I also self-taught myself a few programming languages such as Python, C, C++, JavaScript, etc. And these tools became really essential for me to build my ideas. And at the same time, I was able to have some work experience. Like during this period, I joined a Series A startup where I joined in as tech lead and I managed a team of 10 developers at the time. And this role was really a turning point because it really gave me the opportunity to take on responsibilities that is beyond coding, right? And this is where the whole entrepreneur mindset comes in because first you're just a software engineer, you learn how to do certain tasks, but then you learn how to manage a team, how to set up a plan, how to set up a timeline, and how to like prioritize certain work. And this really gave me a idea of how to create collaboration and address complex challenges with tight deadlines, right? Now,
Yeah.
back
Just want to ask one question. So you are from Morocco, right? So how long have you been in US and how Boston impacted your life or what influence did you had? Yeah,
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Boston has been a great environment surrounded by like-minded individuals, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of academics, researchers. You can really find all types of people within this city, right? And the benefit of those kind of features is you can really just pick and choose which community you want to be part of. And you can also be part of multiple communities, and they help shape how you create your mindset and influence your decisions. I'm sorry, Lima, you're
Anima, you are muted.
Okay, sorry, sorry. Just wanted to make sure like how far was your journey from Morocco to US have been influenced in your life so far? Yeah.
right. So a little background about my life in Morocco.
Yeah.
So I joined an American school back in Morocco. It was an IB program. And then by the age of 15, when I was in ninth grade, I moved to Spain. I went to a boarding school there, like international boarding school. And I stayed there for 3 years, which then straight on I came to Boston. So there's always like, of course, Boston had a major impact in the way I do things, but there's also what was before Boston, and that for me is a mixture of Morocco and Spain. And the benefit, for example, of going to Spain and living there, it taught me a new language, first of all. It taught me how to speak Spanish, and it also taught me how to understand how different cultures behave because I grew up in Morocco. The only thing I was really exposed to was the Moroccan culture. But when I moved to Spain and the fact that I was international school, I was exposed to many different cultures at the same time. So I could see the way people think, the way they prioritize their lives, how they assess what's important and what's not important. And this really gives you an idea of how to prioritize decisions in general, not just like academic related stuff.
So you had something a kind of when you were international student at Spain, you want to say like that. So
Right.
what extracurricular activities like you found like it shaped your like the one you are seeing now right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about extracurriculars, one of the main things that I did my whole life was golf. I'm a golf player since I was 8 years old. And the thing about golf, like, it's different from other sports because it requires a lot of concentration, a lot of strategy, a lot of like decision-making process. Now, I'm not really familiar. Have you ever played golf before?
No, no, I'm not, but
No.
I'm very like it's a
No.
game, very rich game. Yeah, yeah, it's lots of investment and all, but yeah, it's a
Yeah,
very
no.
interesting to know from you. Like you are also someone who is like very much having an inspiring personality. Like you do all I do. I'm really curious to know how do you balance that? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I mean, for the golf aspects, like that also influenced the decision I make today because in golf, like one thing that I learned since I was a kid was always assess all the variables and see what's the best outcome. For example, when you're in golf course, let's say you have the hole is 300 meters away, right? And in the golf bag, you have different clubs, and each club can reach a certain distance. So there's a lot of strategy making. You have to take into account like the environment you're in, the temperature, the wind, the weather, like a lot of variables. Now, if you translate that to a more entrepreneurial mindset or more academic related decisions that you have to make, it's this idea of listing down all of the variables that you have in mind and deciding which path is best to take. So that's a really important extracurricular that really influenced me as a whole. And the idea of being exposed to multiple cultures that also shapes the way someone can think.
Yeah. So since you have told me about your background, so now I'm just curious to know how do your time as a student, like in Boston, like influenced your entrepreneurship mindset? Yeah. Would you like to share some
Yeah.
insights?
I mean, being a student really taught me to thrive under constraints because as a student, you have limited resources, you have tight deadlines, and you also have a constant flow of new challenges, which really forced me to think creatively and prioritize effectively, right? So in my early years, I turned assignments and side projects into opportunities to experiment with what could become something big and what was just like it was a project, right? And as an international student, I also learned to navigate the unfamiliar environments, which really sharpened my adaptability and resilience. And these experiences really shaped like the whole entrepreneurial mindset, right?
Yeah. So
And yeah,
yeah, how is your life now you compared to others? Like, how is your life now as an international student and also a founder of a startup? Like, I'm very curiously interested to
Would
know
like to
more about
interrupt
that.
over here. Would like to
Yep.
interrupt over here. Taha here is the founder of Brag AI, which is a RAG chatbot, and he's been working on it. Now it's been a month since he's been working on it, and he's got an interesting story to share, which I would leave to like further few minutes later. We would share it later, but I just wanted to share it right now. Like he's also founder of a company. There you go.
Yeah. So, what is like your life now as an international student at Boston and also as a founder of your own startup?
I mean, if I were to summarize it in one phrase, it would just be that it's a constant balancing act. You have to balance your academics, you have to balance your social life, you have to balance everything that's going on in your life, especially as a student and international, because there's a lot of other variables to take into account. But if we were to describe the day to day, like how my mornings, afternoons, and nights look like, a brief description would be like my mornings usually start with the classes or working on the projects for my master's program. For example, as Vijender mentioned, we're working on Fidelity. That's one of the many projects that we are working on. And during the afternoon, I really focus on all of my personal projects. Among them is Brag AI. And I really try to shift between finishing all course related homeworks, assignments, and use some of the skill that I've learned in those assignments to leverage them on my projects. So that's the good thing about, I would say, Boston and going to a rigorous university like Boston University. It's not really about like the topics that you learn from the courses, but more about the way of thinking. For example, sometimes I would be doing an assignment that would take me 5 hours to complete, but I learn how to think to achieve that solution. So I take that thought process and I apply it to my personal projects. So this is really like the whole balancing act is how can you balance your academic stuff, bring it into your personal life, and from personal life, how can you leverage that to meet new people, social life? Like one little side note, something that Vijender mentioned to me a few months ago, like as an advice, right? It was always to leverage like the people that are around you, like network with people, get to know them. Always be out there, expose yourself to people. That way you can have as many lessons that you can learn like as possible.
Yeah, so I just went through your profile, which says that you have a background in computer engineering. So, what skills did you like fine tune yourself, and why did you decide like from CS to MS in statistical practice? So, would you please share your insights?
Yeah. So as a computer engineer, I was really exposed to software and hardware. Now, in terms of hardware, we learned how to build systems, we learned how to build our own computer systems, our own chips, and so on. And the software aspect is learning how to code. Now, I really learned the whole software aspects, how to build software, how to go from an idea to execution. But one thing that I really lacked was having this statistical mindset of thinking of things as almost binary, like ones and zeros, but at the same time, understanding what other variables to take into account. Because in statistics, you look at many different variables and see the correlation between all of these variables and how one can affect the other. So, engineering, on the other hand, is you have something to do and you have to execute it. Like it's almost binary as it is, right? But here it's like an additional variable to take into account. So that's really why I chose this master's program, statistical practice, because It gives you the best of both fields.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, I'm very intrigued to know this answer. But I just wanted to know what was the demand of building your startup? Could you please share?
Yeah. So honestly, it really started off as me wanting to automate most of my manual labor tasks. So there were many things that I would spend a lot of time on, for example, making presentations or certain other like tasks. And I would accomplish them, but it would take me a lot of time to accomplish it to the detail that I want, like to the quality of work that I want. Now, when I started to think about automation, this is when I started thinking about AI, like as a whole. And I started to narrow it down into what specific parts of AI can help achieve this goal. And this is where I got introduced to RAG. And funny thing about RAG is I was actually familiar with this topic before I actually knew what RAG was, because last year I built this chatbot about myself that was included like all the information about my LinkedIn, articles, resume, and so on. And then I just released it, and it was basically used. It was like a GPT wrapper. It was using ChatGPT's tech, and it answers questions based on me that already had my resume. Now that is a RAG framework that I was not aware of until I studied about RAG in college. And so with Bragg AI, I'm trying to automate, like make the life of researchers, developers, and most academics like much easier, essentially.
Okay, so what do you, according to you, what skills are very much essential for doing such work like related, like LLMs are all now very much hot topics, and you are just very much, I'm so proud, and you are just you get releasing something, and you have already started out your vision plan. So would you please be interested to let us know what will be the skills for having something like this? Not exactly your startup, but something to get a grasp on to where to start from, like if you want to know much about the LLM.
I would say start with coding in Python, because Python allows you to access many libraries that are out there to use AI applications, but there's also some other tools that you can use to understand how the whole artificial intelligence framework like works. Now, if you want to build something from scratch and create like a whole startup out of it, I would really recommend that you learn more about what's going on behind the scenes of AI, like things, topics that are not being talked about so often in the field. Because on LinkedIn, we see so many news about AI can do this, AI can do that, and people are just mesmerized by it. And they check out those products and they just use them, but they don't really understand what's going on. Like if I were to ask people, oh, like, do you understand how ChatGPT works, how it's able to generate those answers? Most people would say no, which is understandable. But if you're looking to get into the field and really start building on your own, I would say learn what an LLM is, understand how an LLM works, learn how you can, what's the difference between all the different types of models and different types of architectures. Like really understand what makes AI AI.
Yeah, so you have just put the blends of your expertise as much as you can. Like, I'm very curious now. I would like Vajinder to just pop out and just because she's having an exciting as she knows your story so much. So I would be very much interested to her to share the how you both met and how you both decided and your journey so far. So off to you, Vajinder.
Thank you, Alima, for handing over to me. Well, to answer your question, Alima, how we met, that is exactly like a really interesting story. I mean, nobody could guess, but we met through Reddit. Like I was applying for a statistical practice program and looking through the students who were applying for the same. And Taha like commented on some of the posts related to MS statistical practice, and I reached out to him. And we eventually shifted to LinkedIn, and it ended up me seeking advice about coding from him, how the lead code is done, and all of that stuff. He would guide me, and then eventually we ended up being classmates. I ended up joining like I'm a statistical practice, and yeah, that is how we met. Yeah, yeah. So I would like to ask Taha some questions as well, even though like I know like a bit of it, but still I would like to ask much more because he's giving me some descriptive answers right now. I should grab the opportunity and ask more. So like I always wondered what is the like difference in the mindset of a creator, since you are one, and an entrepreneur, which you are also one, and a researcher. So like, is there any difference, or is there any common thing in it, or like what exactly are your thoughts on it?
Right. I mean, to me, all of these roles they really overlap, but serves different purposes, right? Like a creator is someone who takes an idea and turns it into something tangible, like a product, a tool, or an experience. An entrepreneur sees the bigger picture, focusing on the creation that can actually scale and like the impact that can actually scale and the impact lives, and also how it can fit into a larger market. And a researcher, which I'm sure Elima is familiar with in her own experience, is driven by the curiosity and exploration, often diving deep into the why. Like, why is this happening? How does it work? And understanding like the why behind the problem or the concept. Now, from my experience, I've worn all these three hats, right? Like as a creator, I've created several different projects, including bRAGAI. And as an entrepreneur, I've always worked on finding ways to scale these ideas into meaningful platforms. And as a researcher, I've explored how AI and other types of models can optimize the systems I build, right? So each role feeds into one another. And if you're able to have all three mindsets, you're basically able to create whatever you want in that sense.
Perfect. That sounds really good answer. Yeah, and that makes sense. So, moving further, like I've been already always been curious as to how, like, of course, being a student of MSSP, I know how it helped me, but how it helped you with Bragg AI or the development of it, or where exactly, like, I know you told me about how you are, like, whenever you do some assignments, the same assignments that I do, help you in thinking about like brag in a certain way, right? But I would like to know more about it, like how exactly does it help you in the development of brag AI?
I mean, if we look at Bragg AI as a whole, like Bragg AI was about optimizing tasks, building like fine-tuning LLMs, fine-tuning models. And to fine-tune a model and understand if it's actually performing well, you have to do some statistical analysis. And this is where MSSP comes in. You have to do statistical analysis, look at the graphs, look at the numbers, understand if the learning rate has actually increased, like if it has improved, if the train loss functions have actually decreased, and so on. So we're not going to get into too technical about it, but essentially is really understanding if your model is actually improving or not, and that is done through pure statistical analysis. And that has really contributed to how I built Bragg AI.
Okay, great. The next question, I'm actually curious about it because, as you said, I gave you a lesson a month ago about something. So that question, I really want to know your answer on it right now. So, how do you actually approach like teamwork and collaboration now that you are starting a startup? There you
I
go.
mean, I think teamwork starts with listening, right? Like understanding what each person brings to the table and what motivates them. It's really like sitting down and being on the same level as your whole team. If you're creating an early startup and you start acting like a boss and not like a leader, you're not going to get anywhere. Like when it comes, for example, to work with someone, like for example, with bRAGAI, if I plan to hire people, I would always think of I would only hire them if I'm also willing to work for them. Like if in another scenario they were the boss, like they were the leader and I was the employee, would I want to work for them? If the answer is yes, then I would love to have them on my team. And that's where the whole like really creating a strong team comes in. But besides that, it's really important to create a culture where people feel comfortable with one another and they can share whatever they feel like sharing ideas and taking initiatives. So collaboration essentially and being transparent are really the two most important factors when it comes to these kind of topics.
Okay. Now that you talked about initiatives, I feel like that's where most of the people get stuck at, because they say taking the first step is the hardest, but then persisting through is even hardest, right? So, what do you think about it? How do you like? You have taken so many initiatives. I have seen all of your projects and all of that already. Like, how do you get through like when you fall down and then again get up and then start something new? How do you take that first step again and again? So I think many would like to know that.
I mean, of course, taking the first step is always hard, especially like depending on each person's background or scenarios in life. Like some people might actually be constrained to try new ideas, whether it's financial constraints or academic constraints or work constraints. Like there's many types of constraints, but taking the first step is important in the sense of just try it out. Like you don't need that many resources to create like a prototype. You know, that there's so many resources out there, so many tools out there that you can use for free or almost very cheap. And just take the first step by experimenting. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like Bragg AI, it started off as something that I had on the terminal window, like no UI, no nothing. It was just testing out the code, understanding if I could actually like write the code myself or if I would need help. And then everything else that comes into translating that project idea into some sort of business, that's for later on. But first, just see if it works. If it does, show it to a few people, maybe your friends, family. Try to get an honest answer. Does it actually work? Do they think it's useful? And based on the market research that you do, and after having the market validation, then you can assess whether you want to turn that project idea into a proper venture. But before getting there, like just do it. Like that, there's no point of delaying it. If you think that you need to do more research, like no, just do it. That would be my honest advice.
Great. I think that's where many people like get stuck at. But now that you have brought Bragg AI, like how you were commercializing or you thought of it as a product, I'd like to know what exactly is Bragg AI having that our ChatGPT is not having?
Great question. Because I've had this question so many times, and people think that it's just like another Chat GPT wrapper. But the whole idea of Bragg AI, like, first of all, it's built upon the RAG framework, hence the name Bragg in Bragg. And B stands for like bot, but like RAG B, like RAG bots, is kind of weird, but Bragg AI just sounds cool, in my opinion, at least, right? But Bragg AI really stands out because of its ability to connect multiple knowledge sources dynamically. So let's say you're a researcher and you have a corpus of documents on machine learning and then another corpus of documents on deep learning and some other like files that you have, like it can be YouTube videos, PDFs, GitHub repositories, anything that you want, anything that is a content and is within some type of file can be uploaded into these knowledge sources and you can combine them dynamically. Now, besides, for example, if you wanted to analyze code repositories, summarize research papers, or even like extract insights from a video, you can do that all at once, like all at the same time. And that's something that would be really useful. And another like unique feature is its context switching ability. So users can decide which knowledge the chatbot should reference. It will be able to like make it highly customizable and user driven.
I see. Actually, I've seen his whole chatbot working in person, like when he first made it, right? And that was so interesting because whenever he has nothing to do, he would just, type in build me this Flappy Bird game and he would play it. And then he would give it another commands. He would build a like solar system and then give another command to get something more. And that's just so interesting to see. So I would like to like maybe when I'm like posting this video, I would attach a link of Bragg AI. People should really explore and build their own Flappy Bird games out of nowhere, right? So that's
No, yeah.
that's nice thing to learn. Yep. Okay. So another question is like I already know the answer to it. However, I still want to know more. Like because I've always heard this from external sources that the laziest people are the creators or they should be the creators. And I have seen such creator in front of myself who is lazy and who wants automation. So he works hard to be lazy. So what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, I think lazy is the wrong term here, but I would say it's more about prioritizing what's important and what's not. And the parts that I prioritize as not important, that can be seen as lazy, just to clarify what lazy means in this context right here. But in terms of using in terms of using this idea of automating tasks, this really came in from like years of like in academia, like for Fidelity, for example, or for other work, we had many tasks where we had to design presentations, where we had to write documentation, research papers, and so on. And that required pure manual labor. Like It didn't require any intellectual capacity. It just required time to do these tasks. And we already had all the information in hand. We just had to craft it all at once into one form of documents. And so this whole idea of lazy and creativeness, it does correlate. Okay, it does correlate. But yeah,
Yeah, I would like to ask Taha one more question. Sorry for the interruption. So how many hours do you work, like being a creator, entrepreneur, and also a student? Yeah.
honestly, almost every hour that I'm awake, to be honest. But if we were to quantify it, I would say most of my days are split between my course-related work and personal projects. Now, recently, there has been a slight tilt from working more on my personal project than my academics, and that may have had some slight negative effects on my academic grades. But then again, I don't believe that academic grades define who the person is. It's more about what they're able to do with the skills that they have. And with that in mind, the answer would be most of my days.
But yeah, here I would like to again a disclaimer which I gave to Taha a month ago. Don't deny like you need to put efforts in your studies as well, even though you are really smart. So don't be really, like non-serious about studies. Yeah, because we both are suffering from it now. Okay, moving ahead. Um, Taha here has a Alima like really interesting way of networking with people, like really interesting way of networking with people, which I would like him to show. Like usually people use LinkedIn to network, meet with new people, enjoy, right, whatever. But he has a really interesting way to do it. Can you share about it, Taha?
Well, my way of networking is really to go out to parties. And what I mean by that is non-parties in the sense of going out and forgetting what happened the next morning, but parties in the sense of going out there and really having the opportunity to meet friends of friends. Because if you were to go out to an event with your group of friends, and they have other friends that you haven't been introduced to, you would expect their mutual friends to be somewhat similar personality types as your close group of friends. So by meeting people, friends of friends of friends of friends, you create this huge network of like-minded individuals. Like right now, if I knew Vijender for like if I went to with Vijender and a couple of her friends that I haven't met to a certain event, then I would assume that Vijender's friend are similar to the way she thinks. And that would basically offer me three other visitors that I can talk to. And by expanding this network, by connecting with people like physically and in person, that really helps meet like certain individuals that you would like to.
Yeah. So that makes me question your another thing. Many people have difficulty in, especially introverts, because they can't really talk with other people. Like, for them, maybe texting is more easy. And that brings me to Taha's another project that he was planning to launch, where he was thinking to help people network, especially students. And like we were talking about how some people would be like really interested in texting rather than chatting, but overall there are some people who even hesitate to like say that one word that could connect them with people. So is there any word that you would like to say to those people who even hesitate to say hi?
It's always tricky because when someone is introvert, you cannot really change the way they are, the way they feel. It's something that's within themselves and telling them, oh, just go out there and say hi. Like that's, I guess, fair advice, but it's not really applicable to everyone, right? So mentioning about the other project that I was working on, it's basically a sort of video tool, like a social video tool that allows you to connect with other people from different colleges in an instant through like some sort of video type of roulette. Now, for example, let's say I wanted to meet you, Vijender and Ilima, through the app. I would, for example, for Ilima, I would type in the settings. I want to meet someone from Stanford doing postdoc, and someone else from BU that's in the MSSP program. I put that in my settings, assuming that both people are online and using the app as well. I would be able to match with you two instantly. Now, if you decide to skip, then you lose all the contact information of the other person. That way, we retain the anonymous and privacy of the other users. So this can be like another way of interacting with people, video interaction that are instant, because it mimics the physical interaction of meeting someone new. If you go to an event or some sort of club and start talking to someone, you just tap on their shoulder and you introduce yourself. There's no stalking their social media profile, understanding like if they have a strong online presence or not. Like it's just understanding who the other person is from their inner selves.
That's encouraging to many people, I think so. Uh, Another question that I have in my mind that I want to ask here about is like when you were building Bragg AI, like I was there, but anyways, so is there like any, there should be, is out of question. So like, can you share any challenge that you faced while you were building Bragg AI to its present situation or present model?
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons was underestimating the early user feedback. And that is because I started this out as a project with many cool features, but they weren't really essential features. Like they were like, oh, that's cool, but so what? And that so what factor is something that I haven't considered like previously, especially in other projects. So now I'm starting to talk to more people. I'm starting to show the prototype to Vijender and a few other people to understand what really matters and what we need to focus on. Because I've seen this happen many times from people that I know, as well as articles that I read online. Many startups out there, they fail because they really rely on their own personal like emotions and feelings to a certain product that they're building, as opposed to really understanding the user feedback. So that would be something that was a challenge, is the early user feedback, but also managing time effectively, understanding the whole priority aspect.
I see. So, like as you said, like if someone wanna get into AI development or LLM, all of this work, they have to like know what exactly like is happening behind the scene, right? So, is there any other suggestion you would like to give to other students who are also working on AI projects while they're students or they're studying?
Mhm. I would say start small. Like, don't wait for everything to be perfect. Use your coursework to experiment. Turn assignments into opportunities to test ideas, and also like collaborate with peers and seek mentors who can guide you. And most importantly, don't be afraid of failure, because every failed experiment, they teach you something valuable that can be used for the next experiment, for the next iteration. So just get started. Don't be afraid. If you fail, that's expected. It will actually be surprising if you actually succeed. Like you shouldn't build something with the expectation of succeeding. You should build something with the expectation of failing, because that's what happens 99% of the times. Many people say, oh, 99% of startups, they fail, only 1% succeed. That is true. So don't focus on that 1%, focus on the 99% and understand why that 99% happens. Don't try to find the perfect solution from your first route, because that's not going to happen. And that hasn't happened for me either. It's I'm still trying to figure out the what the solution is, and I'm trying to climb my way up to the 1% of the success.
Valid enough. So the last question, which I have, and the biggest one, I think so. Like in the end, everybody would question this: how the hell to reach where you are, or what do you think mostly contributed? There, as you said, there are many factors that contribute to make a person who is currently, right? So if someone wanna reach at your level, the way you are doing your stuff right now, handling between a startup and student, and being an entrepreneur and a creator, and thinking of creative ideas, and then putting them into the progress work and all of that, and you are like the core of our own projects that are going into our program itself as well, right? So doing so much stuff and at such a pace, like you are doing it, like, and managing all of that all together at once, right? And like how do we reach at that point? And
I think I think everyone should go at their own pace. It doesn't mean that an individual is going really quickly, that if you don't match their pace, you're gonna fail. Sometimes a task or project that may take you a few weeks to complete and another person a few days to complete, that doesn't really matter in terms of time frame. Like what matters is the thought process, the effort that you put into the project. So what have you considered? What have you taken into consideration to like experiment with. So taking the idea that pace is one of the deciding factors of whether you'll be successful or not, that's one of the most unreliable metrics that you can think of when it comes to evaluating success of a person. You can take a lot of time to accomplish something, or lower time. That's based on personal preferences and the way you think and evaluate things.
I see. That's a really good advice to someone who's rushing through the stuff, thinking how other people are doing it. And I think we both suffered from it narrowly, like me and Elima. Like, because while we were preparing for this whole project, like, as in, like, when like I started interviewing people, I connect with people. Taha knows how I connect with different people. So when I was doing it, Elima got the idea like, okay, maybe the way Vijender is doing stuff, we could do it more formally and maybe build an organization out of it. So someone else did it prior to us. That had Elima rushed through the stuff. Like she was rushing. She was like, our pace of doing stuff is not like, fast enough. And I think that narrowly coasted us to like, launch stuff really early without considerations. And I think, as Taha said, that is the most worst like metric that we can have ever to, like evaluate success. So I think
And
we. Mhm.
one thing to add on to what you're saying, like a good thing about seeing other people in your field, like having a competition in your field, especially if they're trying to do everything fast, they're about to make mistakes. So when you take a step back and understand what mistakes they've done, instead of going through that as well, you just choose different paths. You avoid that mistake as a whole. You know,
Yeah.
like for example, if we take an example of Apple and Samsung, Apple have introduced so many features a couple years after Samsung has already released them. And Samsung, they've released so many features, half of them fails, half of them is a great success. And then Apple, they come in, they introduce new features that have already been there in the market for a while, and they are seen as the heroes, they are seen as the
Mm,
top number one brand. And that is the most perfect way of thinking because you use your competitors as a means to understand how the market reacts to certain ideas. So yeah, again, back to the pace thing. It's important, of course, like you don't want to get into the market too late, but getting in too early can cause issues.
yeah. Alima, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I have questions about your what is the insights you faced about meeting the pitching kind of thing for your startup? How do you just strategize those plans and to raise funds for your startup? And how do you target and prepare yourself to meet the deadlines as well?
Right. When it comes to pitching, there's always the first thing you have to do is introduce what the problem is, and not a problem that doesn't really exist that you've created specifically for a product, but a problem that anyone can relate to, whether they're technical or not technical. And then when you introduce your product as the solution, you have to make it as objective as possible. Like there were cases where I had a few projects that haven't really like succeeded or anything, but when I pitched them to someone, like they look at me and they're like, I would never use that product, you know. And those are the kind of responses that I like because they actually give me their honest opinions. And when I ask why, is they're basically saying like either the solution is too complicated, like it makes the problem even worse, or they say this problem is not even a problem, that's just a you problem, you know. So it's really understanding like, is there a problem in the markets? If there is, there's a solution, actually provide solutions. And once you introduce those two like pair of problem solution, then you have to have some metrics, whether it's market research, customer surveys, understanding like how people react to your idea. If you receive many potential like clients, like people that would actually use your product, then it's a good idea to get into the product even more. And this is what I did with bRAGAI. Like I built this landing page in 2 days, like something that looked nice, like the homepage. And in the homepage, I had like a little waitlist form that says like enter your email if you're interested to like stay updated and submit. Nothing else. I don't need their names. I don't need where they're from. Just understanding how many people are interested. And today, like I've released that waitlist form about 3 weeks ago, and I've already achieved over like 2,500 people that are interested in bRAGAI. So that's also something that is some sort of indicator that there is a place for it in the market.
Yeah,
When
so
he says
when
a place, there
Mhm.
is really a place because all of our classmates are now thinking maybe Taha would be the one we would say we actually studied with this person, at some point.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So, when do you like you say like for learning and getting to know more about it? Like I said that you are confident about that, but when do you say like, yeah, this our product is very much ready to launch in the market from being a prototype to a full-fledged product? So when do you get that feeling or from your perspective, you being a developer, founder, everything done by you? Yes.
I mean, it really comes into how stable is the system. Right now, I'm focused on the features, but I haven't optimized it to scale to thousands of users. Like, I imagine that after a few thousand users, the app might start to get slow or something else might happen, like it'll crash down. So there's always this aspect of, is your system good enough to handle a lot of users? If yes, you've gone a little past the prototype phase, but you're still within the prototype phase. And then once you've established what are the official features that will remain in the app, this is when you start to have your MVP product, which is slightly different from prototype because prototype is like for development purposes, and MVP product, which stands for the minimum viable product, is what we're going to go into market with. And after that, you get the user reviews, you see if your business can scale, if you get more subscriptions. And this is where you go from prototype to MVP to actually beta app release. And from beta app, the alpha release, which is the official 1.0 release.
So just wanted to be curious about, so when do you like plan to go just grab into the market?
It's a very different for many different industries. In this case, I'm targeting industries where OpenAI is the lead competitor, where Microsoft is the lead competitor, where Meta is the lead competitor, where all these big tech giants are the main leaders of the industry, and it's very extremely difficult for anyone to go against them. So right now I'm focusing on smaller communities, and these communities are more about researchers, students, like people that would actually find the tool useful as opposed to targeting the majority of the population. And by only using like word of mouth promotion and just having friends use the tool and then have the friends share the tool to other people and so on, through this word of mouth promotion, understand if there's an actual growth. And from there, it would be understanding when is the appropriate timeline to announce when version 1.0 will be released, when version 0.5 will be released, is understanding like this whole user gain traction.
And I would say
Yeah,
he is targeting it really well because one of the researchers, like top researchers at BU, whom I'm working with in the maths department, I told him about what project we are doing with Fidelity and how is this RAG system working. And like, now there's one more product that is related to it. And he was like, I mean, who would not be interested in putting in some documents that he has, like, worth of hundred and thousands of pages and getting something out of it? That would be really interesting to see. And like, if you see such people like talking about like that. So if you could see Taha's approach over here, targeting researchers and academia is like a really potential growth he would see in that.
yeah. So my sorry for not first, of course, my last question to Taha is like, when do you like, when do you like, you think like you feel like growing up your team? Do you have any such plans?
I do have such plans for that, but not at the current moment. For now, is really stabilizing the initial version of the app, but I am open to having like more individuals that would like to join in and help contribute in improving the LLM, help contribute improving its performance and so on. But it's something that I still have to put some thoughts into it for now.
Yeah, so though it's like towards the end of the questions, but just wanted to make sure that Vajinder Easy, like he also was competitors in Forbes 30 under 30, right? So would you please highlight that what it was like? He was very having a competitive mindset and like how it's influential into his career. Like I just wanted to highlight this part.
Yeah, I think so. I don't need to really highlight, like this part, to be honest, because Taha here is like, I think he would be able to share it more than I would be able to do so. Like, you see the confidence of this person. I think you should go forward.
Sure. I mean, yeah. Should I talk about it or
You should brag about it.
brag about it?
You should not hesitate to just highlight that part.
For sure, no, I
Yeah.
understand. So, as I mentioned previously, some of my work experience included working at a Series A startup as a tech lead and managing 10 developers. And during that time period, I actually joined the startup when they were in their seed round, and I grew with them all the way to Series A. And in that period, I had the opportunity to network with many people, directors of the field, politicians in Brazil. I went to the Web Summit in Rio, held a speaking event on how AI can have like social impacts, and that really led me to really grow my network all the way like all throughout South America essentially. And from there there were a few journalists that interviewed me at the time, and one of the journalists was a Forbes 30 under 30 like Forbes journalist. And when we discussed a few weeks later, like after I came back to the US to continue my studies because I was still a junior in college at the time, I received an email saying congratulations, like you've been nominated for the Forbes 30 under 30 Boston local list. And from there on, we had like a chain of interviews that led to like different meetings. Like there was about like 6 rounds of interviews, like understanding who I was, like the metrics that we achieved, like within the company and so on. And towards the end, I managed to make it to the final round. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the final official list, but according to the Forbes journalists, I was among like the top 60 nominees that were left. And from the 60, they selected 30. So that in itself is a huge feat and a huge milestone that I'm really proud of. And I look forward in the next
And
couple of
and
years.
that was the time you didn't thought about Bragg AI, or
No,
it
that
oh
was
my God, that's
Yeah,
really a big
BRAGAI is like
achievement.
just a month ago
Congratulations.
thought.
Brag AI is about 2 months old. This was about a year and a half ago. Yeah.
That's amazing. I must really, I somehow missed to talk about. So I think in the later part of this interview, so I just reminded myself like we should just highlight your achievements. And I think there is much more in the list, like I have seen in your LinkedIn profile. Would you please highlight to our viewers?
Yes, of course. Among the list, I was also like interns. Like I had a few internships at a few different companies, and that also helped me understand how the whole business side of things works. I've held internships at startups, at large corporations, and understanding the difference between how a corporate and a startup works really helped me understand what kind of differences are there, like the transitions that are required between startups and corporates. And one thing that I learned working, especially at my last work experience in the Series A startup, is in a startup, you are every role. If you join in as a marketer, you're also going to be the software engineer. Like you wear all the hats. There's no such thing as you join a startup, especially if it's a small team startup and you're only working on what you were hired for. That's never going to happen. That's not real. That's something that is not really talked about often. So being in a startup really forced me to be the tech lead, but at the same time be the business guy, also the operations guy, also the marketing guy. I was wearing all the hats like stacked up on my head, and that really helped me understand like how each role is really important for a business to succeed. And this is where like hiring becomes essential because at some point when you reach a certain level of growth, there is absolutely no way that you can do all the work alone. You need people to work with you.
Absolutely true. Because the research work we do, no matter what stuff we make, like if you are unable to translate those, we don't know how it will be. Like it will be working or it will be not. So that's very important, like to have the thing like from a real research lab and then translatable to the market, right?
Mhm.
Which you are already doing. Yeah. Off to you, Bajinder. You have something to like ask Taha.
No, I don't think so. I have any more question left for Taha to ask currently. Maybe in the upcoming few months, we would have him back over if he's like done something more great than he's doing right now, which I'm pretty much sure of he would do something because this guy's like progress in whatever he's developing is just a lot. So I'm pretty much sure we would need him over at a platform like. So yeah, I think that would be it. from my side. If you have any more question, we can ask, or if not, then we can conclude.
Yeah, just wanted to wrap up with the series like from Taha, like how like the initiative we are doing for the viewers and to our next generation or our generation students or aspiring ones who wanted to do so through this initiative. What message do you want to give? This is your last message.
I would say if you have an idea in mind, if there's something you want to try it out. Don't think about it too much. If you feel like you have a product that might be successful and really change your whole life, do it. Build the first code. Don't wait till tomorrow or till doing more market research. Just open your computer right now and type in your first line of code. If you're in a less technical field and more in a business field that requires more resources, then just build a homepage, put in a waiting list, and describe what your product is going to be, and do some little marketing initiative to see if people are interested. So just get out there, put you like expose yourself to the markets, have market validation, and just get started. Don't be constrained with competition. Don't be intimidated by, oh, there's so many players in this market, it's so saturated. Even if it is, maybe you're going to become the next big like giant, the company giant, like big unicorn. So just get out there, do what you got to do, and get started.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure, like, from Vajinder and your schedule, like, to the viewers, like, it seemed to be too busy for you all, but still, you both made it happen. Like, to be honestly being part of this session, which we are since a long time back, we are thinking to host. And thank you. I just wanted to just uh, give a big thanks to for having it happen in such a small amount of time. And yes, do you have anything to say, Vajinder?
I think I would just say like we have made it possible for this interview to happen. It has taken like a lot of efforts, a lot of time, and I think so a lot of thoughts into it. And having our first speaker over, it took a lot of thoughts to even think about it. Like firstly, me thinking the person next to me could be the interviewer. Like we would be hosting. That was never ever like thought about in the first place. Like as Elima said, that was made it possible in the really small amount of time, right? So I would just say like the only unique thing that what me and Elima thought about this is like keeping the originality over here, because for sure like every other videos we would have some questions prepared, but Taha is the witness over here. The questions that we thought to ask, they are out of the window, but we were all natural all together. So I think that that would be the part where I would say is the one you can make out of the most, because most of the time we're like it's not scripted. Like over here it's definitely not scripted, right? So that is really hard to find, right? So knowing the original words from the original people, I think that can get you somewhere, because I have personally been benefiting from it, because I used to connect with people like Elima. I would connect with people over at LinkedIn so much
Yes, especially
that I
connecting
would,
with the time zones we belong to. The
yeah,
time zone is
exactly.
also very difficult to connect with the people, but still we have made it. Like I appreciate your time, no matter you are so busy with
Yeah.
like for so long I was not able to just talk with Vajinder and say